Trapped in a COVID hell, that's the fate of more than 9,000 Aussies and 17 of our cricketers stranded in COVID-ravaged India as the border snapped shut. This morning, some of those cricketers under fire after calling for a special charter flight to get them home. Today, poll this morning reveals 63% of you say the cricketers should not get special treatment. Let's discuss with Queensland Senator Matt Canavan and Sarah Lemarquand, Editor-in-Chief at Stella and Body and Soul magazines. Good morning, guys. Nice to see you. Matt, to you first of all, it's a nightmare situation in India, truly horrible, but you can't blame the players for wanting to get out, can you?
No, I don't blame them for wanting to get out. I'd want to get out, of course, as well. And look, I don't think the players deserve special treatment per se, but I think the complete closure of the border is a little bit of an overreaction and a backward step, unfortunately. We've got to keep advancing here and get back to normal, and we should be building up and trusting our quarantine system. No one's saying here that people from India should just be able to come fly in and start walking down the street. There needs to be a system in place that quarantines people, especially from countries like India. But we've had 300,000 people go through quarantine, and we've had a handful of outbreaks, none of which have spread to widespread outbreaks in the community. I don't know. I worry here. What are we going to do for long term? Because there will continue to be coronavirus outbreaks around the world. Are we just going to shut our borders every time? I don't think that's sustainable.
It's a terrible situation there, though, and even in quarantine now, 40% of the infections are from people who are coming in from India. Would you put on evacuation flights to get the Aussies who are there stranded out?
Well, we did that in Wuhan when the outbreak was first on. Back very early on in the crisis, we had specific charter flights that brought people out. They brought them to Christmas Island at the time. And so I do think we need to look at something like that. If we've closed our borders completely, I just don't like the idea of leaving Australians over there stranded, whether they're cricket players or others. There's lots of Aussies in India, and I think we can't just leave them there. There needs to be some attempt to help people, particularly in dire circumstances, get back.
See, Sarah, I think it's such a bad situation there, and our hearts bleed for everyone who's going through it in India right now. But I think a border closure, when we can't trust quarantine, is probably the right course at this point. What do you think?
Well, I think that the danger of what's happening in India, and I agree with you, Karl, it's absolutely devastating, is that it can have such a knock-on effect globally because we're talking about a mutant strain. So we have to be agile through this pandemic, and I understand what Matt's saying, but this is a particularly unique situation. We have to exercise caution. I agree with the viewers. There can't be any special treatment for the Australian cricketers. I also sympathise with the dilemma that the Australian government are facing, because you can't turn your back on citizens overseas, but you also can't make panic decisions and you can't make exemptions. Well, I just want to give a shout out, though, to Brett Lee and Pat Cummings, who have made donations towards the COVID relief in India, specifically for oxygen supplies. And I think when we're talking about the Australian cricketers, I would really encourage them to give back to a country that's given so much to them.
100%. Let's move on, and a huge boost to our military might in the top end. The PM today announcing an extra $747 million to increase our northern combat capability as tensions in the Indo-Pacific grow. It comes on top and off the back of top security chief warnings this week. The drums of war are beating was said yesterday. To put it into context, though, let's have a look at the matchups as we go into this bout. This is Australia versus China military. Australia's Defence Force is currently made up of 60,000 active personnel. China has 2.3 million. We have 59 tanks. They have 7,700. And the numbers are just as staggering when comparing Air Force. So there we are. They've got 4,000 planes. We've got 450. And in terms of the fight on the seas, they've got 780 vessels, including 70 subs. And, well, we're hopelessly outmatched. Matt, do we really want to punch on with a Goliath?
Well, Karl, I think what is very important is we play a role with other countries in ensuring peace and stability in our region. No one is suggesting we are in this fight alone. We are part of a strong alliance, especially with the United States, and the United Kingdom the other day mentioned they're stepping up efforts in our region as well in response to China's aggression. So we've got to work with our friends. And one of the ways we work with them really well is having these world-class training facilities here in Australia. So that's why these investments are really important, because I'm here in Rockhampton and every year we host the US military at Shoalwater Bay, one of the best marine training facilities in the world. And the Americans love coming here because of our resources.
Matt, are we on or not
and
with China?
likewise, these
I don't
investments
know.
will help continue
Are we
to
on?
build that
Are we on?
Is it on with China or not? I don't know what's going on.
Sorry, Karl, I missed that. I was talking.
No, you were talking. I just don't know where we're at. I mean, we've got fighting words going on with China, but you're saying no?
Well, look, there's a risk of conflict. There's no doubt about that. I mean, we want to avoid that. The best way sometimes to avoid a war is to prepare for one. So we have to make sure that we're ready to show any deterrence, to be, as I say, build up these relationships with our partners, to avoid conflict, because that's ultimately what we want to do.
Okay. Sarah, our athletes are heading off to Tokyo and they're jumping the queue in terms of vaccinations. Do you have a problem with that, or you're okay with that?
Look, it's a motive to say the headlines have started that they're jumping the queue, but we've got to be realistic. If the Olympics go ahead and all signs are that they are, then our athletes are heading overseas, our high-performance athletes, in 3 months' time. Of course they have to be vaccinated. The AOC has come out and said they'll work with the private contractor. Obviously, it can't come at the expense of vulnerable Australians, but we're giving assurances that it can't. I sympathise with the athletes. I mean, it's such an important event, and we as a country want them to go and perform well on the global stage. We have so much of our national worth is invested in our high-performance athletes. They've got to be vaccinated.
Good to talk to you, Sarah. Good to talk to you, Matt. And I'll see you next week for Beef Week 2021 in Rock Vegas, the beef capital of the universe. I love it up there. Good on you, Matt. Thank you.